Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I am the moderator of the webinar. You know, the title is The Greener Future of Shipping Industry. And I think that this webinar allows us to analyze the environmental scenario of European ports. We'll find out how is the relationship between port authorities and environmental issue. I want to introduce the speakers. First of all, I would like to introduce Tor Østervold. Mr. Tor Østervold is the CEO and founder of ECOsubsea, which has a development technology that keeps vessel fuel-free of fueling with a robot that sends all biofueling further to be used in biogas production. The vessel saves substantial amounts of fuel, and both the water and the air environmentally is kept cleaner. Currently operating from south of UK, Belgium, and Netherlands, and servicing leading companies like WWL and Carnival Cruises Corporation. And ECOsubsea and its team have since 2008 been awarded the Young Entrepreneur Award, Orsel Award, the Green Shipping Technology Award, and in addition to the Global Freight Award in 2016 for development of sustainable technology to the shipping industry. Østervold holds MSc International Shipping from the University of Plymouth. The other speaker we have Raul Cascajo from Valencia. Raul Cascajo currently works at the Port Authority of Valencia as the head of environmental policy. Raul is a PhD candidate in naval architecture and marine engineer at the Polytechnic University of Madrid. He does research in control system engineering, naval engineering, and environmental engineering. His current project is assessment of the wave energy potential in the Spanish Mediterranean coast and its use to feed service in commercial ports. And the last but not least, we have Gerben Dijkstra. He works for Anthony Veder. Gerben has his background in the natural gas industry. Before joining Anthony Veder, he worked in various roles, among others at Gate Terminal for the terminal expansion project with a small-scale jetty, specifically aimed at the LNG bunkering market. Bringing his experience on the short side of the LNG business, Gerben has joined Anthony Veder in 2017 as a business development manager, focusing on expanding Anthony Veder's LNG fleet. Thank you for to stay today, this afternoon with us. And this is my presentation. I'm Valeria Mangiarotti, Marketing Manager of Sardinian Ports, but today I stay here on behalf of MedCruise. MedCruise is an association of cruises ports, and I'm the Director of Environmental Issue of the board of MedCruise. So today we start with my presentation, and then I give the floor to the other speaker. Okay. Today, I would like to speak about the environmental future MedCruise ports. What is it, MedCruise? MedCruise is an association of cruises port. We have a map of the association. We are more 100 ports divided in Black Sea, Red Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and Atlantic. MedCruise was born in 1996. We were 11 ports. But now the association grew up. We are more 71 port authority and more 100 ports. The trends in the Med, it's very important to understand that in our association, the cruises market is the topic. And for cruise passenger movement, we had in 2018 more 27 million of passengers, and in 2019 more 30 million of passengers. So plus 7.83 passenger. Now you know that we are living in the pandemic situation, so the cruises for now stopped and don't work. The passenger movement per country, obviously the Italy is the first. Obviously, why? Because we have a lot of ports and port authority. And the second, Spain, and then Greece, France, Portugal, Croatia, and Arab countries. Top 5 cruise line by holding the Med, Carnival Corporation is the first, the second, Royal Caribbean, and then MSC, and Norwegian Cruise Line, and the others. What does MedCruise bring to the cruise industry? We arrive in the environmental scenario. So we have 4 topics. Issue. First of all, 2020 sulfur cap. In 2023, revised initial strategy. In 2025, the reduction of GH emission 30%. In 2050, reduction of 50% GH emission and reduction of 85% CO2 emission. IMO 2020 sulfur cap is very important for cruises line, cruises company, you know, and also for the ports. So with the IMO 2020, the ports and the cruise line, but the ports also have a lot of choice. First of all, to use from 1st January 2020 the low sulfur fuel. You know, we know very well that from the 1st January of 2020, the sulfur fuel was and is 0.50%. Or to use LNG as alternative fuel, or to use the ship with a system of scrubber. Just a legal framework. You know very well this, okay, I'm a lawyer, but you know very well this European directive. I think I would like to underline the Green Deal, is the last one that we have, and also the revision of EU MRV that will be at the end of 2020, because I am also the responsible in ESPO, in the Environmental Commission, and I represent MedCruise, and Assoporti is an Italian association. So we discussed about this. This is a very big problem, because in the future we will be very strict, the situation very strict for the ports and for the cruises company. The Green Deal was presented on December 29. You know very well that we have a maritime sector. In the maritime sector of the Green Deal, we have 3 points: improve fishing and fisheries management, maritime space, and in further regulating the pollution caused by the ships that potentially make it mandatory the use of OPS, onshore power supply. And then an intention to include the transportation maritime exchange system allowance. The environmental scenario, the port of the future will be smart, interconnected, and green. 3 points very important for our association. These elements are the present and the future for ports. Now, I would like to discuss the challenges of the ports of our association. Like a director of environmental issue, we made and we are making a lot of study about environmental issue, and but the last year we finished a study about LNG. But at the end of the day, the ports can have 3 possibilities for our environmental idea of our association: LNG, or to choose very low sulfur fuel, or to choose cold ironing. So we are working to decide how is the best solution for our ports. We know that over 100,000 ships dock in 4,500 ports in the world. is a lot of cruise ships in general. And a large cruise ship in port for 10 hours burning up to 20 tons of fuel and emits 6 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. So you can imagine, for example, in our situation, we have Barcelona, we have Venice, we have Civitavecchia, and in one day arrive 5 cruises in one day. That means to have a big city in our ports, because we usually have more 20,000 passengers. So this situation is a very sometimes difficult for ports. So it's necessary from Port Authority to have the imperative scenario. First of all, it's very important for a port to adopt energy plans to create the greatest possible self-sufficiency. You know that in Italy we have a new law, is 2 years that we have, but a new law for Port Authority, and this law provides that every Port Authority must have a new efficiency plan. So the name is DEASP, Documento Energetico. So every ports in Italy are starting to have this document. It's really very important also to understand the situation, the environmental situation of ports. The second is find the economic reserves to be used for LNG or cold iron infrastructure. And then, very important, integrated policy between cruises line and ports. Why is important? Because, for example, we have a Black Sea ports in our association, and sometimes when we speak about the policy of EU Commission, some ports like Odessa or other ports told me, oh, Valeria, it's not important for us, the European law. No, it's important. Why? Because the cruises line, when go in the Black Sea, if the Black Sea ports are not ready for environmental issue, some cruises line decide to cancel these ports. So the environmental issue is is a European environmental issue, but is an issue important for all ports. Then involvement of the port cluster. These elements is very important also because it's necessary to have a good communication between ports, region, and municipality. And last but not least, to have a unique intelligence. We have uniformity between ports and cruises to have a system about reduction emission. Renewable energy is a topic also for us. We have three pictures. One picture is electrical car in Cagliari. The picture of Dubai is a LED technology, and others renewable energy. The possible difficult choice of OPS, onshore power supply, because pay attention, because now, like MedCruise, we believe that LNG is a good solution for our port, but you know that in European Commission are discussing about the possibility to have onshore power supply for every port. But we believe that it's really very difficult for cruises market. Why? Because the demand of companies is important. The high installation cost, we don't forget also these elements, and then the difficulty of being able to satisfy with onshore power supply, with the cold ironing, all cruises. Because when we have a lot of cruises, it's difficult to have an energy, renewable energy, to satisfy all cruises. The source of energy is really very important. You can consider that one cruises usually use 7 megabytes to stay some hour in a port. You can imagine if you have 5 or 6 cruises in a day in one port. LNG, I think, like Valeria Mangiarotti, like director of the board, I think that LNG is gas solution for me, for the Port Authority, for the ports. Why? For example, in Sardinia, we have 3 projects of LNG. We are work in progress about it. One in Cagliari, one in Oristano, and one because the Sardinian ports, we have 7 ports in Sardinia, and also in the north of Sardinia. The choice of LNG depends on the company's demand, existing project, and European funds. LNG benefits we know very well. And the best strategy for Mediterranean, we believe that LNG, also for environmental benefits, CO2 reduction 50%, reduction of PM 97 and 4.4%, installability, and then the coastal storage capacity cubic meters 50,000, we have 80 million. Coastal storage capacity for 10,000 cubic meters, we have 30 million. The source is liquid, is gas. This company are working in our ports. Then we have another possibility, the supply of LNG with the barge. Especially we like MedCruise, we organize a meeting with Barcila, and they presented to all association this barge. It could be very interesting for the ports that you can consider that we have, especially in Italy, we have some ports that they don't have space. So it's difficult to organize some system of LNG, and the barge could be better. The LNG perspective for cruises, we have a cruise with media 2,000 packs, and the consumption of LNG, we have Aida Nova, warships. I would like to underline that the Costa Smeralda is the last cruise with LNG. We are waiting Costa Smeralda in Cagliari. Unfortunately, with this situation, they decided to cancel some calls, but we hope that we are waiting the cruises in October or November. We have 25 LNG powered cruise ships, 22 of the order book. This is the Tenerife, the port of Tenerife, and is LNG supply operation, ship to ship. And also we can ask where does LNG sit in the post 2020 fuels and environment? And we can say that currently 354 confirmed LNG for the ships, and also bunker vessel capacity is developing fast, almost 7 higher capacity in 2021 compared to 2018. That means that LNG could be the future. Now we arrive at the study of MedCruise, environmental surveillance map, finished, I told you, at the end of 2019. Survey of MedCruise, we organized survey with a lot of, our members. The survey was divided in 3 sections. The first section concerned the supply of LNG. You see that track to ship is the supply LNG most common. Most ports use a track to ship. Few ports pipe to ship, not so bad barge to ship, and tank to ship. The members supply LNG, track to ship at Barcelona, Cartagena, Alejandría, Madeira, Marseille, Tenerife, Valencia. Pipe to ship at Cartagena, Huelva. I would like to underline that Huelva in Spain is really very organized for LNG. And barge to ship, Cartagena, Alejandría, and Huelva. The second section concerned in which period the ports of the association started using the LNG in the port area. And we say that the beginning of the LNG supply is very strange because in 2017 we have 5%. I think that this question is a little has been a little bit difficult because it's very, for us, it's very important to have a picture of our ports and to understand when the ports started to the LNG system. So in 2018, we have 80%, in 2017, only 15%, in 2014, only 5%. The third section concerned the implementation of the European directive by the national law, in which was the communication between the port and community about the LNG supply. Well, I think it's a topic for me. This why? Because okay, on my opinion, it's really very important to have a European directive that are implemented by the national law. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes not happens in this situation. That means that we have a European directive, for example, in 2014, and the national law arrived 2 years later. So we cannot work in the same table, you know, like association. It's really very, very, very difficult. But the answer was yes, 68%, no, 32%. And then the other section, sorry, the part of this section was about is the port city community are in favor of LNG supply in the ports, and obviously yes, most ports are answer yes. Also, the communication is important because I would like to underline that if there is not good communication between ports and municipalities, sometimes the mayor of the city, for example, like in Cagliari, decided to cancel the project, or not to cancel, but to speak not very in good position and doesn't follow the ports. LNG port members, we have LNG map. This is the result of the study. This map is in our website of MedCruise. This map is updated month by month. And at the end of the day, Raul is Raul. I think that you are very happy because the Spain is the only state ready for LNG for cruises. For cruises. And then we have also Marseille and also Alejandría de Egipto. The other map about the supply LNG, big scale, Cartagena and Huelva, and then willing to supply LNG, obviously Madeira ports of Tenerife and Spain. That means that in Italy we have a lot of projects of LNG, but they are work in progress. And because we have a lot of bureaucracy in Italy to have authorization to build a system of LNG, and sometimes it's a problem for the port authority, and the company that decide to invest in this system. And the situation is the same. The last but not least, we have the hydrogen ship power solution. This is will be a topic for MedCruise. We are studying about it. We know that there is a Norway company that are building cruises with a hydrogen ship power solution. And we are studying it, and we, like an association, we want to organize a meeting with this company to understand if there is a possibility to have this system, is also if it is convenient for port authority and to receive these ships. Thank you for the attention. And you know, if you want to make some question, you can write an email. This is my email, but also I write this later. So if you have some question, Now I give the floor to Mr. Tor Østervold to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valeria. That was very, very interesting to hear. I will try to share my screen with you now. And first of all, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to join you this afternoon. And also to the organizers, BS Group, for putting the focus on the environment, which we all need to.
You don't. Sorry, maybe Raul has a problem. You don't listen, Raul. Anyway, because maybe can you hear me, Raul? Raul? Okay, anyway, so go on.
Should I just continue, Valeria?
Yeah. Sorry, go on, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you see my screen now with the ocean cleanup, volume 2, which is biofiling? I totally agree with you, Valeria. We need to collaborate to make things happen. And what we've seen since we started the company 12 years ago, me and my brother, is that it is through collaboration we can achieve things also for sustainable oceans, and particularly collaboration between authorities and ports and ship owners and technology providers. When it comes to the ocean cleanup, the great initiative from Holland has done a lot of job in plastic, but we see that biofiling is going to be a crucial thing to clean up in the future. And the positive thing is that at the same time as we do this, we could save fuel and save CO2 that is emitted to the environment. This is just an illustration for me and a brother hanging in a snore here in front of a ship, trying to illustrate how you clean a ship. I'll show you later that we luckily have robots that is better suited and is more efficient than us. Over the years, we have been very honored, as was mentioned by Valeria also, to receive several awards. And this is a great honor, but it is also a fantastic sign to see that the whole world is now starting to take sustainability more seriously, and seeing that the ocean is probably the solution to the challenges we are facing when it comes to sustainability for our whole world. But then we need to ensure that we treat it as good as we can. I added a little video that I'll show to you now that shows a little bit of what we're doing from the port perspective, but also from the ship owner's perspective.
Fantastic.
There you go.
It's been likened to a cross between a vacuum cleaner and a lawnmower. Attached to the hull, this machine is stripping off dirt, slowly cleaning an area the size of half a football pitch.
We've developed soft jets, so that's a whole new method. We use very low pressure jets, but we use seawater, and it's only seawater and electricity to drive some cleaning discs that moves over the surface, and they're situated on this submarine.
The waste is pumped back to a collection tank, removing the need for divers or the cost of a dry dock. Keeping them afloat is good for the cargo business and saves money.
We estimate through this we could save over 10% in our fuel costs just by basically cleaning the bottom of the hull, keeping it clean just as you would to basically reduce the friction.
Environmentally, the risk of transferring live organisms around the world is much reduced. The residue collected is also valuable biomass fertilizer that, once burnt, creates electricity.
This waste has been freshly scraped off the hull of this ship. It's then bagged up for processing. Half a ton of this muck is enough to power one light bulb for over 5 years.
Until now, a vessel of this size might get a spring clean every couple of years. That can now be completed every 6 months.
There are many different rules that apply to different ships and so on, but we do have very high standards here, and we're trying going forwards to make sure they get a higher still, because we recognise we have an impact on the city locally, and we're trying to reduce that impact going forwards.
If every ship passing through the port were cleaned in this way, it would help power around 100 Southampton homes a year. Alistair Fee, BBC South Today.
And when we started the company, we saw that the reason why you were cleaning a ship was to save fuel, because you had less drag on the hull and thereby you save fuel by going to the water. But what we see is going to be the driver going forward. That's environmental reasons. And David Attenborough, he just stated in a film that loss of biodiversity is our biggest challenge going forward. CO2 is a big challenge, but if we lose a species and important links in our food chain, suddenly Coca-Cola disappears, and bread, and butter, and then this is hugely challenging. When it comes to the oceans, this has been a challenge, and it's not because there are coming angry Norwegian species that are killing local Dutch species, for example. The problem is that we are transporting foreign species that take over the food or the sun in new areas where they come. And they thought earlier that ballast was the reason for the transport of alien invasive species over our ocean. But in New Zealand, for example, it turns out that only 3% of introduced species are coming through ballast tanks, whilst 69% or more of these species are introduced through biofiling. Current technologies has also had some challenges in this regard, because normally it's been done like you see on the picture to the left, where cleaning has been done in ports, but all the waste and alien invasive species have just been spread to the local port waters, and thereby you had a huge problem with pollution in the port and for damaged coating. So thereby it is a loss situation. In addition, you've had challenges where you have little bit of collection on vehicles, but then you actually have the same problem with pollution in the local ports. When it comes to the regulatory, that is also picking up. And in 2008, biofiling started to become a much bigger problem than it was earlier in history, because then they removed out tintibultine, which was actually an efficient poison that was used in antifouling. So when you took out this, biofouling became a much bigger problem. This has been targeted by the IMO through the Ballast Convention and its Annex 26 on minimizing transfer of alien invasive species through biofouling. But not the least, we see now that countries are not waiting for international regulations to come. They are setting down their foot individually. So we see now that New Zealand, California, Australia, for example, say that you are not allowed to come in if you have too much biofouling on your ship, or if you cannot show records of what you're doing with your vessel. So this brings the shipping industry and the foresights into parts of a catch-22. And in the 5th of March, we saw this, the first time in maritime history. This vessel that you see up to the right, Marigold, she was supposed to go into New Zealand to discharge for 9 days, but the government did a spot inspection of the fouling on the bottom of the ship and said, because of this, it's too much fouling, wrong types of species, you have to go directly out of our waters and you cannot come back until you're clean. So they set the course to Fiji to clean the ship there. But then the media came on top of this and asked the government of Fiji, okay, so this Marigold, she's too dirty for New Zealand, is she allowed in Fiji? And then Fiji government said, give us a second. And they came back and they said, no, she's not, if she's too dirty in New Zealand, she's too dirty for Fiji. And they asked, but why? And they said, just for the same reasons as New Zealand. So this was the first time in maritime history where ships actually were stopped and did not have a berth to come to because of biofouling. And we believe that this is going to continue, where ports are going to say, no, we are not going to allow ships in with foreign species that can then crush the development of our sustainable ports. On the flip side of this, which is challenging, is that ports are also then prohibiting traditional in-water cleaning because they don't want this fouling to be released everywhere. And we've seen it over the last years that robotic solutions as well, with partial collection, so they're collecting a little bit of the fouling, they are being banned. So by amongst others in Southampton, Antwerp and Rotterdam, several cleaning companies have been banned from doing cleaning activity because they are polluting the local ports. So here is a job to do. Our take on this is actually to follow the biofouling from the start and take measures in a sustainable manner when you need to. So we've developed a small detection tool, which actually is a way to start following when biofouling layer builds up on a ship. And when we analyze the data, put it into an algorithm, and spits out a fouling factor between 0 and 10. So if you're a true 5-year period, have 1 in fouling factor, great. You don't need to do anything with your ship. But if you start increasing in the fouling factor, for example, you have a 1 on a ship in January and 2 in April and 3 in July, then you know fouling is increasing on my ship. And the port also know this is the risk of this biofouling on the ship is starting to increase. We must do a measure. And when it comes to measures, we have developed this equipment. And it is basically a highly movable setup, which is set on a purpose-built trailer, which we can bring from port to port with ease. So we are now working with several ports to get permission around Europe and then to gradually grow from there. In this package is a filtration process system, a cockpit where you drive a robot. The robot, of course, launch and recovery system, an engine, and a soft jet pump. Underneath the water, and when this ship comes in and is doing loading and discharging, we release the robot into the water, and basically it goes back and forth and cutting the lawn, whilst continuously water is pumped back through the filtration process system that you see here to the left, and then the water is left even more filtrated than it was initially in the water. Instead of then shooting jets, as you see to the left here, directly onto the hull or using brushes, which has then damaged the coating traditionally, we are developing something called soft jets. So you shoot the jets in parallel with the surface. And thereby you can actually achieve that you use much lower pressures and you are leaving the anti-fouling in better position than before it was cleaned instead of damaging it. And the filtration process system, where all the water continuously goes through, that is first a sedimentation process, then a biofouling removal process, and that was what you saw in the movie, where we collect 50 to up to 1,000 kilos of dried grass from each cleaning operation. And because it doesn't damage the coating, this is organic matter that they can use in biogas production, as was described on BBC. Then we have a second sedimentation process. We have another particle removal process, which actually, that's when we start to clean the port waters, filtrate those. And then we have UV treatment to kill any living organisms that is smaller than 20 micron. All the waste is collected and on shore, and then more filtrated water than was previously sent back to the port. But we also added a microfiltration step, which can be used in case of need. And that can filtrate the water all down to 1 micron. And that is in the case where the anti-fouling, for example, would be compromised. We have, as I mentioned, worked very closely, amongst others, with the Port of Southampton. And we looked at how can we ensure that we don't only have, in a way, a one-time test and then that the long-term effect is negative for the port. So we started sedimentation tests right underneath where we were doing the cleanings, in addition to the rest of the port. And in the Port of Southampton, we found that the average levels of copper and zinc was 42 and 92 milligram per kilo, but exactly where the cleanings had happened, this is for the first 60 cleanings, we found that on all these spaces, it was actually lower copper and zinc levels in the sediments right underneath where it was cleaned. And this is where we hope to bring with us a collaboration with the port, with the technology provider, with the ship owner, and with the authorities, and bring transparency, and so everybody can see that we are making the port water fresher, the vessels are saving a lot of fuel, and the regulatory get control of the aliens invasive species that is visiting the ports and the country. We have also developed a port biofouling monitoring system, where we send the port a record book every month, where they can see all the cleanings that's happened, video from all the cleanings from in front of the robot and from behind, so that you can ensure that there's no pollution going everywhere, and also receipts on all the waste that has been sent either to biogas production or to a certified contractor. So I'll just finalize now, Valeria, with a wrap-up of the status. Where are we at volume 2 of the biofouling in the ocean cleanup? Well, now we've cleaned 600 vessels from leading ship owners. We have collected 60,000 kilos of grass and biofouling and alien invasive species. There have been 3 million tons of CO2 saved, which is it's actually 1 million ton more than all Norwegian annual emissions from air traffic in a normal year. We have been working with port champions like the port of Oslo, Gothenburg, Copenhagen, Southampton, Antwerp, Zeebrugge, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and Portsmouth International Port, and are now getting in touch and are searching for collaboration of partners who wants to join the movement of cleaning up the oceans for biofouling. We have a goal, we have several goals, but one of them is to be able to clean 10,000 vessels a year. That would mean taking 1 million tons of biofouling out of the water every year. That would also cause about 50 to 55 million tons of CO2 to be saved. And as a fun fact, or as an important part for us, Norway emits 54 million tons of CO2 annually. So that would actually constitute to the same as all annual emissions. Thank you very much, Valeria.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Then we can, I ask you some questions. Anyway, go on. And I would like to invite Raul. The floor is of Raul Cascajo.
Thank you, Valeria. Okay, I'll sharing my screen now. I think Tor should quit sharing his screen.
Tor, can.
Yes, I will try to stop share. Okay. There, I think. It's all yours, Raul.
Very good, very good.
Here. Okay. Okay. Just a second. No. Gosh. Excuse me. Don't
worry, it's okay. I think it's really very interesting, this presentation.
So it's difficult. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Valeria and the BS Group for inviting us and give us the opportunity to share our experiences in decarbonization in shipping with all of you. It's a very, very interesting, the presentation that Valeria has made before. Some of the topics that she has launched will be in my presentation. However, I don't want to treat it in as deep as she did, for example, the LNG. And the presentation from Tor is also very, very interesting, and it links also with my presentation because it's a way to increase the efficiency of the vessel and to reduce the consumption while the vessel is sailing. We actually, I take the opportunity to say that we are using a similar system in Valencia, and but of course he's also invited to contact us in case they want to check their system in our port, because you know, it's a free market, so whatever you want we can do it as long as it benefits the environment. Okay, I'll go with my presentation. The Port Authority of Valencia is the public body entitled to manage 3 state-owned ports located along 80 kilometers at the western side of the Mediterranean. It's Valencia, Sagunto, and Gandia. However, in terms of traffic, Valencia is much bigger than Sagunto and Gandia, and the type of cargo handled in the port of Valencia is more focused on clean, let's say clean cargoes such as containers or cars, for example. This is the, I will focus my presentation in the port of Valencia. It is where we are now implementing the majority of the energy, well, the decarbonization measures. So this is the distribution of the port of Valencia. We have different container terminals, bulk terminals, and ROPA, port member of MedCruise. And this is now a different, you know, it's a kind of the traffics. For example, this is where the port of Valencia is located in the city of Valencia. We have in Valencia almost 800,000 inhabitants, and the metropolitan, the surroundings, and the city itself is 1.5 million inhabitants, and the total traffic is 70 million tons, 5.2 million TEU, 0.1 million, let's say, these rural units, and the impact in terms of the direct and indirect jobs, it's 31,000 and 1.82 million euros of economic impact. If we go to the topic of this webinar, what ports could do make the decarbonization a fact? Valeria has mentioned some of them. I have just highlighted these 4 initiatives, or four things that ports could do, and then I will try to compare them with the actions that the ship owners should do in order to make this decarbonization a fact. First of all, eco-efficiency initiatives and efficient handling. Secondly, best practice agreements, renewable energies, and onshore power supply. I will explain a little bit any of them. For example, in terms of energy efficiency, the first thing is to know where you have the consumptions. For example, in case of Valencia, as I mentioned before, we are a container port, although there are some other cargoes, but basically containers. And the electric energy goes to ship-to-shore cranes, reefers, offices, and lightning, while the diesel consumption is RTGs, terminal tractor, reach stackers, and empty container ports. Now, we have the picture. Now we have to address any of these consumptions. What can we do? Okay, this is first of all, the port management bodies, in this case, the Port Authority, has a little impact in the, let's say, in the decarbonizing of the logistic chain, because we are just managing the land. We are not the operators. The operators are the ones who have to lead this change. And then the port should lead the initiatives for the implementation of these eco-efficiency initiatives. For example, we try to make people think that the implementation of energy management systems is good. First of all, ISO 5001, it's good for the operators because it's not like the ISO 14001. ISO 50001 means savings, monetary savings, which goes directly into their pockets. So that's why they are very, very happy in implementing these initiatives. Then implementation of action plans for the increase of the energy efficiency, provided the needed infrastructure and the legal framework to make the former feasible, and supply traffic management tools to reduce the waiting times at roads for the ships. For example, as an average, the stay on roads of a cargo vessel in Valencia, it's around 22 hours. So now, for example, we have we are going to build a substation. With this substation, we will have enough power to give energy to the ships, and we were not able to do it, let's say, 1 year ago. Now we are in the process of building this substation, which will change everything in the Port of Valencia. It will be one before and after. Best practice agreements. This is Valeria mentioned before about the involvement of the cluster. So if we don't go together, it's, as I said before, it's not, there's nothing we can do. So for example, in 2011, the Spanish law of ports implemented, or it contained the possibility to sign green agreements with the port operators. In this case, if you are a port operator and you want to sign this green agreement with the Port Authority, you have rebates on the tax applied. But in these agreements, then you have the obligation to reinvest some money of the rebates. For example, I have this graph here. This is the total investment of the operators in the period 2012 and 2018 in environmental initiatives, 36 million euro. And the reduction of CO2 is 345,000, which means more than 50,000 tons of less per year. And these are the different initiatives that they have invested in. For example, you have 73%. It's basically, it's energy efficiency and renewable energies. And the second one is 22%, which is atmospheric emissions and noise. So if we go with all together, which almost they are very, very linked one to each other, we go with 95% of the investment, of the total investment, have been dedicated to decarbonization of the port activity. Renewable energy. Okay, this is something that it's starting. So what is the target? The target is a reduction of dependency from fossil fuels and the energy autonomy. Which options do we have? Wind turbines, offshore, onshore, photovoltaic plants, onshore, offshore, and other. Tidal waves, which are in a earlier stage, but we shouldn't disregard them. So, for example, we have some examples here. For example, onshore wind turbine, we have examples in many ports in Northern Europe. But okay, I'm Spanish, so I wanted to bring the Spanish example. Alinara, Las Palmas, we have this windmill here, and in Valencia, this is a simulation. It's not yet built, but it will come. It's solar panels on the roof of a storage silo for new vehicles in Valencia. Okay, this will be a fact, hopefully by the end of this year, beginning next year. Renewable energies, again, tidal energy converter to the right, and we don't have tides in the Mediterranean, we're sorry, so we are not very interested on that so far. Maybe climate change brings something different in the future, but at this moment, there is no tide. And for example, on the wave energy converter, we have an example in Israel, in Jaffa, which they have implemented a system that could work. Now I have some figures here. Now this is the Valencia example. Wind. If we consider 20 megawatts installed, which is not out of the blue, we could have a production, average energy production close to 50 gigawatts per hour. Photovoltaic, we have 6 megawatts installed, a production of 10 gigawatts hour. And if we go with waves, 1 megawatt installed, we could have a production of 2.5 gigawatts. Altogether, comes to the figure of over 60 gigawatts hour, while the present consumption of the Port of Valencia is close to 7 gigawatts hour. So if we can implement that, we will decarbonize very, very strongly the activities of the Port of Valencia. If we go to the onshore power supply, okay, but for onshore power supply, as Valeria said before, we have a lot of problems. It's who finances that? What is the final, who use it, who doesn't use it, the harmonization, but whatever, we are starting with that. For example, now we just have our experiences. We have experience from 1.5 years already. It's 550 kilowatts for tugboats only, but we are now with the substation, we will be able to provide electricity for RoPax vessels and for container vessels. And this is the scheme, how it works. Now, what can ship owners do? Well, I have kept the same topics. If we go to eco-efficiency initiatives, we have some of them: energy efficiency design ignis, operational measures like reducing fuel consumption through tidal operations, route check, reducing experience in strong winds, specific developments and technology, improvement of hull shape and propeller efficiency, then proper maintenance, and then I have included hull cleaning, as Tor mentioned before, and then best practice agreement. Our law permits also to have these agreements with the ship owners, not only with the port operators, but also with the ship owners. That's why it's not really easy to see in some ports of Spain that we apply the ASI or Green Award or other schemes. Some ports do it, but as we have it already in our law and it's something that we can do it, then to give an additional rebate, then it's not really interesting in terms of economy for the ports. But in that case, for example, last year, 2019, 3,841 vessels had a reduction on the dock use for the amount of 1.1 million euro. It was 14% over 2018 figures. So we are giving every year, we get cleaner vessels and we spend more money on the rebates. Sorry. And renewable energy. Well, I didn't want to deep too much on that, but for some examples, this wind and solar, this ECOship and this wind ship, these are still models, but we already had last year one vessel like this one, like this wind ship in Sagunto. So it was they had some wind sails made of carbon fiber and so on. So this is something that it already exists. Onshore power supply. Okay, it was, we have four, okay, Tor mentioned before the four, sorry, Valeria was the one who mentioned the difficulties for OPS. I'm more optimistic than you, so I will highlight the advantages for ship owners, which is the emission reduction, less noise and vibration on board, less wear and tear on auxiliary engines and reduced maintenance cost, and rebated on port use, as I said before. So at the end of the day, if you run the figures run smoothly for the ship owners. I'm not saying, for example, that the bulk carrier will be benefit by this initiative, but for example, a vessel that remains a lot of time at port, then for this type of cruise vessels, ro-ro and ferry, it's totally profitable. And the use of cleaner fuels. Okay, you have mentioned some of them: low sulfur fuels, LNG, hydrogen, biomethane, ammonia, and I have some examples here, beautiful examples. And the results is Valencia port has been a pioneer port in having the calculation of the carbon footprint verified by a classification society, exactly Lloyd's register. So our calculation is verified, and these are the graphs. The graphs on the right shows the evolution of the carbon footprint. We are now calculating the carbon footprint of 2018 and 19 because it's not really easy to calculate it, because we go to scope 1, 2, and 3, and the scope 3 is not really easy to get all the data, because when we consider the boundaries of the port for the calculation of the carbon footprint, we consider the port as a whole, and then all the operators are included, and it's not really easy to get all the information, the accurate information from them. That is why we have decided to calculate and to report the carbon footprint every 2 years. So now it's 2.5 tons of CO2 per metric ton handled. And the graph on the left, it shows the efficiency of how much energy does it cost the handling of a ton of cargo. So while in 2008 it was close to 10 kilowatts hour per metric ton, in 2016 it's a little bit over 6. So we are in the good way, and the conclusions is the decarbonization is not an option. The port management bodies should lead the path towards the zero emission ports. The port community, including shipping lines and ship owners, must follow the lead shown by the port management bodies, and the technology exists, is there. So we just need financing and proper legal framework to implement them. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much. This is my contact, but if you have any question, you can perfectly address it to Elnara or to PS Group. Hold on. I will stop sharing, sorry. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Raul. It's very interesting, your presentation about Valencia. I know very well the port of Valencia, but I think you are work very, very hard for environmental issue. And now the floor is of Gerben Dijkstra. please.
Thank you very much, Valeria. I hope you can all see my presentation. It should be shared on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. So thank you for the brief introduction, and thanks to BS Group for giving the floor and providing this opportunity. I will elaborate from the perspective of a ship owner, since I work for a shipping company, Anthony Veder. So I hope I can add a different perspective to this discussion. And what I will do is I will do a quick introduction of what kind of company we are, and then quickly switch over to how we look at sustainability and improving the environmental footprint of shipping, and what our perspective on that is, what we are already doing, and how we are looking towards the future, and what we have learned so far. So to begin with, a very brief introduction. We are a Rotterdam-based company. We are an integrated ship owner, as we like to call it, which means that we do all aspects of shipping ourselves. We have our own crewing, we have our own commercial operations, and we do our own technical operations. And prior to this operational phase, we also do most of the concept engineering and design ourselves. So we are involved over the full life cycle of the ship, and we are making many of the design choices before taking the ship into operation. And then we have to live with the consequences of that for usually 23 to 25 years until the useful end of the life of the ship for us. We are a company that is active in liquid gas shipping, so we basically ship everything that is gaseous, but that becomes a liquid once you cool it down or pressurize it. We have a fleet of 33 vessels at the moment. About 1/3 of those ships are transporting or delivering LNG. 2/3 of them are sailing with petrochemicals. So that means they are transporting LPG, they are transporting ethylene, they are transporting ammonia, they are transporting all kinds of chemicals, or all kinds of liquid gaseous chemicals. I'd like to focus a little bit on LNG for now, because that also explains a little bit how we look at the future of fuels and the future of energy and sustainability in shipping. And there are mainly two perspectives for us on this. And one is that being a ship owner, we have to make choices ourselves as to what kind of fuels will we go for. And we will have then for the next 25 years work with a ship that has a specific fuel system. On the other hand, some of these fuels and some of the energy carriers that can help make shipping more sustainable are also cargo we carry. It's cargo we carry from A to B. We deliver from the point of production to the point of demand, or it is cargo that we, like with LNG as a bunker fuel, that we deliver by using our ships, some of which are dedicated bunkering fuels. And in Valeria's presentation, I already spotted one of our ships. That is a little game I'd like to play on conferences to see when to see where I see our own ships popping up. But those are broadly the two perspectives. We have ships transporting the cargo, so it's potential business. But since we have a long-term exposure to the design choices we make for the ship, it also means that we have to pay close attention there. So as a ship owner, I think there are 4 different perspectives or 4 angles that we take into account when looking at sustainability and when looking at our position in that world. And one is kind of the global perspective, the Paris agreements, the IMO regulations regarding emissions reduction in shipping. There is a huge debate that will not stop, that will not go away, on reducing carbon footprint, on reducing emissions, on reducing fossil fuels. So we have to deal with that. That is clearly a reality, and we work and operate within that context. And the second is, if we zoom in a little bit and you look at shipping, one of the questions we asked ourselves 4 or 5 years ago was, what are the actual numbers? And I found them quite staggering because they give an interesting perspective on what measures should come first and what measures can come in later. And if you look at the role of shipping in total global energy consumption, shipping takes roughly 3%. These are IMO data, but 3% is more or less the ballpark figure. Then if you look at the amount of carbon dioxide emissions that are caused by shipping, it is also close to 3%, slightly under 3%, but it is more or less pro rata to the amount of energy that is consumed by the shipping fuel. But then if you switch to the perspective of looking at nitrogen and sulfur emissions from shipping, then you arrive at quite staggering percentages, which are above 10%, 12, 13% of the total global sulfur and nitrogen emissions are caused by shipping. So we found these numbers to be quite shocking, and despite that, I have not seen them a lot in publications, and I have not seen people giving a lot of attention to them. This is something that needs to be addressed. Even though there is not much of a spotlight on it now, it needs to be taken care of, and it can be taken care of. These numbers date back from, I believe, 2014 or 2015. So I would guess the IMO sulfur fuel cap of 0.5% will have taken care of at least part of that sulfur emission bar in this graph. But if we just look at our own industry, there is potential for improvement, and we should go for that. And the third angle we see is a more national level, and this differs from country to country. There are huge differences between different parts of the world, but wherever we sail at the moment with our LNG vessels, we see that part of the drive for that business is coming from national requirements and national legislation saying we cut down on emissions. And this picture is a power plant on one of the Caribbean islands. It is on one of the Dutch Caribbean islands, which is a large tourist destination. And people don't want to see this black soot coming out of the chimney. They don't want to see these yellowish sulfur fumes. They want to clean that up. And the fourth one is for us as a company, we can then choose how are we going to position ourselves. Do we want to position ourselves as the people that are, well, mind their daily business, that do what they do, and just follow with the large crowd? Or do we want to be on the front of this development? And what we are saying is that there is, regardless of where this future will develop, this trend is unmistakably heading towards cleaner fuels. So there could very well be business for us in that. So we decided to take a position more upfront, because we are quite convinced that if we don't make that decision ourselves, somebody else will make it for us, and that will leave us definitely in a worse place compared to when we try to take the lead and be part of a group of early movers. So this is how we look at sustainability in our business and what we see as the main drivers. And I think this is a short intermezzo. This is a different angle of the picture you had in your presentation, Valeria. This is in the port of Tenerife with the bunkering of one of the AIDA vessels. Yeah. So this is Coral Methane, one of our vessels sailing for Shell, that is delivering LNG as a bunker fuel. So after finding out what the world looks like, what kind of business we are in, what world we live in, and what the drivers look like, and how we would like to position ourselves, the question is, what can we do? And ultimately, the goal is to reduce emissions per ton mile. That is the bottom line measure that tells you how clean, how are you performing, how is your performance for shipping products across the world, compared to other modalities, compared to local production, compared to other ship owners, other designs. That is the bottom line measure. So that's what we look at. One important consideration here is that the asset life for us of a ship is 25 years. So whatever decision we make, we will have to bear the consequences for 25 years. And shipping is a fairly competitive market, which means that margins are thin. And if you make the wrong choices, it means you are stuck with a ship that has a penalty on it for 25 years. So it's absolutely not risk-free to be a front runner in this. So you have to be very careful what you do. And this is also part of the explanation why shipping is a bit of a conservative industry. And the approach we take is to see what can we do right now when we do new builds, because we have ongoing fleet renewals and fleet expansion. What can we do by making incremental changes and by building in optionality? Because our crystal ball is as good as anybody's. We don't know where the world will develop. So the best way for us to deal with this while staying competitive is to make sure that we have options. And one of the things we have done is that for a couple of fleet renewal program that we will do over the next 5 years, we have chosen to switch from direct propulsion to dual fuel diesel electric propulsion. So basically you disconnect the physical propulsion, the propellers, from the power generation element. And what this does, and traditionally people choose for a direct connection between the engine through a gearbox to the propeller of a ship, because it's the most efficient. It has the least losses in the transfer of power. But what you can do with diesel electric propulsion is that you can already gain some advantages in terms of optimizing the loads of the engine. Engines are designed to have the optimal fuel consumption at the specific engine load. And if you are maneuvering, for example, there are quite rapid load changes, but also if you have a high sea state, you bump into waves, or you have strong wind, or you encounter what kind of environmental resistance, this will push the engine to a higher load, which leads to kind of suboptimal running of your engine and suboptimal performance. This is something you can improve on by using diesel electric propulsion. What we can also do is take out the peaks of the power demand on our ship. And it creates an option for us, which is that if we install a battery pack, which is quite easy to integrate in this system, and we don't need to do it now if it doesn't make sense right now, we can do it at a later stage. We can do zero emission in port operations. And we see in some parts of the world that there are ports that are quite advanced with this. For example, on the US West Coast, there are plans in quite an advanced stage to make this mandatory after 2025, which is, considering a ship takes 2 years to build, or a little bit more, and a 25 years asset life, that is basically tomorrow. So if that's a trend you see, you have to make sure that you're able to do that, or you will lose business at some point. What it also does if you switch to diesel electric is that you allow retrofitting fuel cell technology. We don't know whether we will ever use that option. We don't know what type of fuel cell would be the best. We have looked at various options. None of them is attractive for us at the moment, but we can integrate it at a later stage. So it does create an option which we may find useful during the next 25 years. And it's an option that we can afford at this moment. We can stay competitive. We can still have the ship we need. And we are ready to move into this type of technology if it starts to make sense. And what it also does if you switch to diesel electric is that you get better performance monitoring in your ship. So it's easier to optimize the operation of the ship. Some other things we do is that, and this is a trend that has been going on already for a bit longer, since computer power increased, it becomes easier, more affordable and quicker to do better optimizations of the hull, rather than doing model testing, which is expensive, and then finding out what the resistance of your hull is and what the impact of different types of paints and different types of coatings is. You can do this with computational fluid dynamics. And those are systems that we can run now during the design phase to see what we can improve already. And this is a benefit, even if it's 0.5% or 1%, that's already a benefit, and that's fuel saved. So it makes total sense for us to do that. There is a clear financial incentive. One other thing we do in our operations is that both for our clients as well as for the ships that are trading for our own account in our own gas pool, we use weather routing, and the value of that has improved dramatically with better data algorithms and better availability of data, of weather data. We can basically see if you plot a certain trip, a certain voyage, we get very similar to what you get in Google Maps. We get 3 options. We get the shortest route, we get the quickest route, and we get the most fuel efficient route based on the weather patterns during the voyage. And that can easily save a couple of percents of fuel. So this all adds up. They all seem small numbers, but if you add 1% here, 0.5% there, 1 or 2% in another place, if you schedule differently, it can add up quite rapidly. So there are improvements to be made there, and this is what we can do right now. So then again, I think we are slowly moving towards what does the environment think of this? Who are the stakeholders in this, and how should we go forward? Now I have depicted 3 pillars here. They more or less reflect the government actors, the financing institutions, and the charterers. So I just happened to pick IMO, the Poseidon principles, and RightShip, but they reflect 3 different important stakeholders that determine the playing field within which we live. And what we see is that IMO already introduced the sulfur and nitrogen emission control areas. We hope they will expand because of the graph I showed a few slides ago. The global sulfur cap is certainly going to help, and the measures to come on a 30% reduction for new build vessels and a 50% reduction on the total fleet. There is a lot of detailing to do in these measures, but the general trend is clear. So we will have to see how far we can get with the current technology, with the current ships, and what we will need to do to go ahead from here. And then, as I just mentioned, there are also port-specific requirements that can be very important for specific clients, for specific trades, specific vessels. The second type of actor that is important for us are the financial institutions. We need financing for our ships, and the Poseidon principles are the 4 principles reflected here. And what we see at the moment is that while shipping is a conservative industry, ship finance is also fairly conservative. So if you are a ship owner that takes a position saying, we want to be forward-looking, we would like to be innovative, we want to help cut back emissions, we are going to make some different choices for our fuelings, for our ship fuels. We are going to make different technology choices. It's slowly changing, but typically this was regarded as something risky, leading ship financiers to say, well, that's a pretty different risk profile from what we are used to. We are not willing to finance the additional cost for, let's say, an LNG fuel gas supply system, or we are not willing to only willing to finance a smaller percentage, or we are going to put a markup on the interest rate. So there is basically, in some instances, there was a penalty on forward thinking, which is very strange. So what it boils down to is that essentially the externalities, the external cost of polluting need to be priced in. And what we think is that if you are forward looking, yes, you have to be sensible about the risk, but you should receive a discount in terms of financing. So it should be clear, because you look forward, you are thinking ahead of the curve. So rather than considering this a risk, I would argue that it should be the other way around. It should be considered a risk to do exactly today what you did yesterday, while at the same time you see that people are that the world around you is changing. How is it possible that you pay a penalty for going with this global trend? So there is movement on this front, and the Poseidon principles is one of them. I'm not sure the Poseidon principles are the way to go, but the bottom line idea is very good here, because it creates clear criteria for how to assess environmental performance. it creates accountability, and it creates transparency, and that is what you need. Then moving to the third pillar, we see that the proposals we bring to our clients, or to existing or new clients, are sometimes considered to be expensive, because in principle we choose for LNG propulsion for new projects. So on some aspects, we see that when push comes to shove, clients go for the cheapest alternative. At the other side, we also have clients that gave us their business precisely because we were forward thinking, because we shifted to cleaner fuels. So there's an upside and there's a downside. And what we see is that charterers are organizing themselves. And RightShip is a nice example. I believe it was founded by BHP and Rio Tinto and Cargill. And I think about 50 other large charterers are part of this. And what it does is it creates a methodology, a framework to assess environmental performance of ships on an individual ship level. And again, I'm not arguing that RightShip is the way to go, but at least what it does is create a consistent framework that provides transparency and that provides a platform to make sure that there is a playing field. Because that transparency is important, but the level playing field is at least as important, because there is a risk, an inherent risk in trying to be a front runner and trying new solutions and trying to improve. But if in parts of the world, or in certain industries and in certain segments of the industry, people are cheating, or people are just doing the bare minimum and are not being penalized for that, it becomes very, very unattractive to innovate, and it becomes very, very unattractive to move ahead. So one of the things we have learned from this is that you should always make sure that if you are developing projects that are innovative, you have to take your clients along. You have to make sure that you explain to them what the benefits are for them, how they can translate that into benefits to their customers. And you have to take banks on board at an early stage. Because otherwise, if you do it at a very late stage, they're going to be surprised, and nobody likes surprises until Christmas. So you better make sure that you take them along and you explain to them why you think this is a sensible thing to do, and that it's actually not a risk, but that it should be a good thing for them. And all these institutions that are listed on top of here do that to an extent. And I think, Raul, you just mentioned the EU Green Deal, or Valeria, I don't know which of you mentioned it. My understanding is that the Green Deal also contains criteria for green financing. And that is something that is very much needed because the criteria are not always clear. They are sometimes inconsistent. They are sometimes incomplete. They are sometimes being lobbied by certain technology providers or by certain interest groups from whatever background. So it is not always, it's sometimes green financing criteria or green criteria are promoting a specific technology. And we strongly believe that the incentive in all these schemes and in all these criteria should be reducing emissions per ton mile, or reducing carbon dioxide emissions per kilowatt hour. So it should be, it's a means to an end. You should not choose the technology. The system should not use the technology. The system should define the goal and create incentives to achieve that goal, rather than pushing for a specific technology. And there is a lot of talk on LNG as a fuel for shipping, and we are firm believers in that. We think it's a very realistic choice, at least in the next 10 years. But what we do not believe is that it will be the only choice. We don't think there is one solution for this enormous challenge. There will be other solutions, and depending on the operational profile, depending on the region, on the location, on the specifics of the ship, one makes sense or the other. But that's exactly why you should not promote a specific technology, but keep it broader and put incentives on the bottom line goal, which is reducing pollution. So then we are slowly moving into the slightly more forward-looking statements, because we are trying to make sense of what these alternatives are. As I just said, we have 10 ships, 12 ships that are LNG fueled, including our own LNG carriers. We have taken a principle decision that our new builds will be LNG fueled, whether they are carrying LNG or not, unless there is an extremely good reason not to do that, because we believe that it's the most mature technology at the moment that provides a significant improvement and that is feasible and where the risk is acceptable for us. But it doesn't mean we are blind to alternatives. And then if you look at energy carriers, if you look at alternative fuels, you see that there is a whole supply chain from production to the consumption at the end of the day. And we are just, bottom line, we are a simple shipping company. So our part of the supply chain is fairly simple. We have tried to make sense of some of these options, like using ammonia, using pure hydrogen or liquefied hydrogen, using methanol, synthetic LNG, liquid organic hydrogen compounds, trying to make sense of the economics and the energy efficiency. And what we found is that the range of numbers you get is vastly differs, depending on distance to market, type of the scale of production, the location, the technology, and tax incentives or tax penalties such as carbon trading schemes have huge impacts on which one comes out on top. But if we focus a little bit on our own business, we look at shipping, we see that the ease of handling is a crucial element both for bunker fuels as well as for cargo. And for bunker fuels, the volumetric density is important because ship owners don't want to give up cargo volume because that's what makes them money. So you have to be cautious of how much volume you use for your fuel system. And for the cargo, which is closer to our core business, it's important what is the residual value of a ship. So if we then go one step further, and we look at a comparison of 6 different options, you see 6 orange dots, which give you the relative density, the relative volume occupancy on a ship of the different propulsion systems. So if you use heavy fuel oil plus a scrubber as the base case, LNG takes a bit more, but it's not double, but it is more volume, but that's acceptable. If you then go to the other end of the spectrum, we look at battery packs. That's for the type of ships we have, and again, this differs from ship to ship, but for the ship types we have, that would take out 39 times more volume than the current fuel systems that we have. So if we would, for example, we have a 30,000 cubic meter LNG carrier that has about 1,000 cubic meters of bunker fuel tanks. If we would sail that on batteries, we would have to bring another ship. So that option is clearly out of scope. So we can park that. But then if we look at hydrogen or ammonia or methanol, which can all be produced from hydrogen wherever it comes from, and which are products on its own with its own market, we can see that for hydrogen, this is it's hard to handle, so it doesn't qualify very well in that respect, and there is not a huge market for shipping hydrogen around.
Yeah.
So there is one hydrogen carrier being constructed in Japan, and we are very interested in how that works out. But for that ship, that would be for us too much risk to take on board, because we will have to deal with it for 25 years and we can probably transport other products with it, but then we will have a very expensive LNG carrier that is way over designed. So that's not a risk we can take on. If we then look at ammonia or methanol, we're already transporting ammonia. The relative energy density is pretty okay. And the same goes for methanol. So those are products that we see as feasible, and we are not transporting methanol. That's more the chemical tanker business, which is not our bread and butter. But it is possible to develop a supply chain. The technology is there, and it is a possibility. So we will keep an eye on that. We don't know whether that will be a sensible decision for the next ship, but we see it as one of the pieces of the puzzle. And the same goes for ammonia. If we would, for example, need to transport ammonia, there is a shipping market for ammonia. So it would make sense for us to build a ship that can carry ammonia on an initial contract that may work based on hydrogen production or fueling ammonia-fueled ships. And the risks would be acceptable. So this is how we this is how we look at these fuels, and ultimately we will not be the ones that decide this. All these, except for LNG, all these alternatives are still fairly challenging in terms of rules and regulations, available technology, and the economics. Depending on the specific case, they can make sense, but they don't speak for themselves. Let me move on. So yeah, let me wrap up here. So during all the discussions we had with clients, the experience we had with building LNG bunker vessels, the experience we have in financing, talking to banks, the experience we have in permitting, talking to class societies for getting all the approvals for new building ships. The bottom line is you need to take everybody on board. No party can do this on its own. And it slows down to an extent. That's the perception of a lot of people, but you will get nowhere unless you get everybody on board and everybody comfortable, because somebody is going to block your plan. So you have to accept that if you are doing something different from the rest of the market, that it takes more time and more effort, but that this is an investment you have to make and that it will pay off. And we see it does pay off at, in the LNG business. And we see that it earns you a reputation, and it makes people open to work with you because they see you as somebody who wants to move ahead rather than be a laggard. So stay connected with people, talk to people, make sure you have everybody on board that is relevant. And I think on that note, I would like to stop it here, and I think we can see if there are questions.
Okay, now I would like to thank you all speakers. Thank you. We have a lot of questions, a lot of questions. So the time is not, we have not a lot of time, but we try to answer some questions. And first of all, I have a question for Tor. And I would like to know if have you created this environmental service directly for with the cruises or container terminals? It's very important to understand if your system, very interesting, you organize agreement with the terminal or port authority.
Yes, very good question, Valeria. And we normally, the way forward, and I saw it was an earlier question as well, legislation is different from port to port and country to country because there is no international regulation yet. So we normally get in touch with the port and the terminal and the regulatory body. That could be state government or municipality. And then we to ensure that everybody is informed, a little bit like Gerben, and as well as mentioned, we see collaboration is key, and we need to talk to the stakeholders so everybody are informed. And then we are working in close relation often with the ports and the terminals in the continuous reporting that we are doing when we are getting permission from the legislator.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's really very important. And then, Raul, I would like to ask you, do you have a clear commitment from the port cluster on your initiatives?
Yeah, we have. We are very lucky because we have the full commitment of the port cluster. We have created in 2000 the EcoPort group. This group gathers all the actors of the port community, and we implement a lot of initiatives and projects together. For example, I can give you some examples. The Green Cranes project, we were part of the partnerships, and one of the terminals was one of the partnerships as well. So now we have a project hydrogen to, well, H2 port, which is a project for the implementation of hydrogen in the port machinery. And we have two operators that also participate in this initiative. Is the one container terminal and one ro-ro terminal. So, and that is why with their involvement, that is why we can calculate our carbon footprint and to report to the society about the environmental performance of the port.
Yeah, it is. Question for Gerben. What do you think the LNG market could change after the COVID, considering that the cost of fuel is go down?
Yeah, what we I was just looking at the questions in the Q&A box, and there was also a COVID-related question. What we see, what we try to do is look a little bit beyond this COVID pandemic. What it does is it creates a lot of uncertainty. It creates financial distress for many industries. It disrupts demand. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but at some point we will find a way to deal with it. So we would see it as a temporary distraction and an important one. I don't want to downplay it or the impact, but at some point the general trend will not change. That will not go away. And what we see right now is that the demand, there is too much LNG in the world. Prices have gone down extremely. Oil prices have come down as well. But long term, we just look at the spread and whether there is a sustainable spread between oil products and gas products, and that perspective has not changed. So yes, temporarily there may be some disturbance, but long term, the trend is not changing. Neither the trend in having a spread between oil and gas-based fuels, or the trend that there is a push on reducing emissions.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I have a question for me, because in the chat, okay, a lot of people asked me if there is a possibility for Italian ports to have a cold ironing or onshore power supply. I think there is a possibility, yes, why not? Maybe for ferry, maybe for a ship that don't stay a lot of hours at berth in the ports. But for cruises, I think it's really difficult. Why? Just to idea from MedCruise for our study, the cost. Who supports the cost of cold ironing, of the electricity on the pier of ports? First of all. Second, the quantity of energy is a big quantity, so it's really very difficult to have a renewable energy to assist all cruises. And then the bureaucracy, because you remember that we are in Italy, unfortunately we need a lot of authorization. So my answer is, okay, is it a possibility to work in progress for cold ironing, for onshore power electricity? But for cruises, is a little bit difficult. I think that this webinar has been very, very interesting. Why? Because we have not, because we analyze a lot of solutions, and I don't know what you think, but I believe that there is no one or the solution for environmental scenario of the port. Step by step, the time is changing very, very fast. So the port authority, the ports can work, can study, but I think that there is no one solution. And I don't know what you think. We start from Raul, Gerben, and Tor, please. What do you think?
Well, I think that the solution, it will depend on a lot of commercial interests, because at the end of the day, we were sold some years ago that the LNG was the answer to all our praise, and LNG is just part of the solution, maybe a temporary solution. We have seen that the LNG is also a fossil fuel and has some methane issues that should be solved. Okay, it is better than other fuels that are currently used, but for the time being, it could be a solution. Let's see how hydrogen develops in the next year, and other possibilities like methanol, or at the end of the day, it's as in one of my slides I said, for the ships, it is not only to see, okay, well, I will be powered by ammonia, I will be powered by LNG or whatever. No, the thing is, they must have a mixture of measures in order to have a better efficiency in sailing, less consumption and less pollutant. I would like to add on your reply to the OPS, to the audience, that one key factor from the port point of view regarding the OPS implementation is to have the client, to have a fixed client, and to have a fixed demand. If, for example, for cruise traffic, maybe it's not the right thing because a cruise company, okay, they can come to Valencia today and tomorrow they say, okay, bye-bye, I go to Barcelona, I go to Palma,
Exactly.
somewhere else. And then you have your facility there, and what do you do with that? If they commit themselves, for example, a container company could say, okay, I have a terminal in the port of Valencia, so I will be coming here with my ships for the next 20 years. So I am the most beneficiary for the use of OPS. So that's why, as you said, and complementing your answer, it's depends on the traffic and depends on the composition or the specialization of the port. And well, I'd like to thank you and Gerben and Tor, because all the presentations have been very, very, very interesting and useful. And be sure that I will be in contact with them for further developments.
Thank you. And what do you think, Gerben?
Yeah, I think what I think the solution, I don't know what the solution is. As I said, there is no silver bullet. There will be multiple solutions. And that's why I was pushing, that's why I stressed so much that any incentive scheme, any regulation should be aimed at resolving the problem, not pushing a specific technology. So I think that is at least a start to the solution. Make sure that regulatory frameworks are technology agnostic, that they are not pushing specific technologies. That's one. And two, the start is collaborating, talking to people, because everybody has their own perspectives, their own ideas, their own part of the solution. So don't sit in your own office and think you can come up with a solution. Get out of that office. A bit harder now, but okay. Join a Zoom webinar and talk to people. I think that is key. And that is the only way also to make sure that you can give input to other people to tweak their solutions so they may fit you better. So keep the bottom line in mind, which is emission reduction, and keep talking to each other. I think those are the key things.
Yeah, thank you. I think that to work a team is really very important. And Tor, what do you think about?
I can just add that I totally agree with Gerben and Raul and your comments, Valeria. I think collaboration is the key. And I think just what is important, but something I feel is already in the wind, is that we need to take action. That, as Gerben says, we are working in a traditional business where you have to think 25 years ahead. But I think that when we're looking ahead now, we have to remember our history, but the most important thing is actually the next generations, and the actions we are doing now is crucial for them and for the environment. So I think we need to collaborate and push towards actions to be taken.
Yeah, to work in team is the key. Okay. Anyway, I would like to thank you for your presentation. I think this webinar has been very interesting to understand the environmental scenario of European ports. And obviously the time is not too much. If there are some people that want an answer, can write an email to Elnara BS Group, and we sure I'll answer. Okay, thank you so much. See you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.